Hello, everyone. Welcome to the S&A meeting for today. We have a couple presentations lined up, and then we'll be voting on a couple things. So I'd like to call this meeting to order at 2:01 p.m. All right, looking at the agenda. Please take a few moments to look over your agendas for today. And then I am looking for a motion to approve today's agenda.
I'll motion to approve today's agenda.
Is there a second?
Second that.
Already seeing that there is a second, is there any discussion? Okay, all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye. Aye.
Alrighty, the ayes have it. The agenda is approved for today. Next, we'll be looking over the and approving the meeting minutes for last meeting. I'll give you a few moments to look over those. Okay, I'll open the floor up to any motions to approve last meeting's minutes. Is there a motion? Motion to approve. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Seeing that there's a second, is there any discussion? Okay, since there's no discussion, we'll move into voting. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
The ayes have it. The meeting minutes are approved. Next, we'll be moving into reports, starting with the chair. I have no reports. Advisors?
I only have to report that you can still have remaining supplemental funding budget of $86,005.60.
And I just wanted to ask if everybody could speak as loudly and clearly as possible. The microphone's in the ceiling here, and when Mia and I are watching back the video, it is sometimes hard to hear. So if everybody could use their very good projection voices, that would help us a ton with meeting minutes and making sure that our voices are heard to our Zoom friends. Thank you.
Alrighty, CWU.
The only updates I have is next Tuesday, February 4th, we have an event for one of our sustainability senators. So if you guys want to crochet, that's a great place to do it. It's going to start at 4 p.m. and I believe it's going to be in the circuit pit, if I remember correctly. But yeah, that's all the reports I have. So I give the rest of my time.
Alrighty, moving forward with communications received. Is there anything?
No.
Seeing that there is none, we'll move forward with public comment. Is there any public comment? Seeing that there is none, we'll move forward with new business. Starting with the presentation, item 1, Pulse Magazine, you have the floor.
Forgive me, I have asthma. Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Gretchen Lose. I am the Media Business Manager, and today we want to talk to you about the next quadrennial funding for Observer and Pulse. So many of you are familiar, but for those who are not, student media is housed in the Department of Education, and both of our organizations, Observer newspaper and Pulse magazine, give a voice to a variety of student experiences on campus. We are funded primarily by S&A, which is why we are here. And we create a more informed student body. But more than that, we also provide a practical interdisciplinary experience through high impact practice. Our students take the disciplines that they are learning in theory and apply it to a professional, tangible product. And Observer specifically has been contributing to a sense of cohesion in the student community for over 100 years now. We have always been and will always be by the students for the students. So we would like to talk about Observer first. what you would be funding is essentially student hourly pay of about 7 positions per quarter. There's always turnover in these positions to give students a chance to be editors, photographers, editors-in-chiefs, the list goes on. The funds would also cover our printing costs, as well as our online operating costs. That's the domain, the web page, as well as professional memberships and award entries. It would also cover our office operations, mainly our printer, not to be confused with the printer that prints the newspaper, but the office printer, and potential travel to conferences where we get national recognition. This would be an example of a year. What we are requesting is the $56,375, and this is a breakdown of how we would spend that money for the year. You'll notice that it's not our only revenue. We also have ad revenue that we estimate would be about $10,000 a year. If we're lucky, we have to point out that since the pandemic, our ad revenue has dropped significantly. But that 10,000 is based on a 4-year average for the last 4 years. And you'll also notice those salary and wages is about that 7 positions. That's 69 staff paid hours per week across those 7 positions. So one thing we wanted to address, because this committee has brought it up before, is the cost of printing. There are various options here. Currently, we are under contract with the Natu World to print once a week while school is in session. But once that contract renews, we could potentially change that. So we came up with a couple of options for you. That $56,375 is if we continue as business as usual, and we continue to print once per week. The other options are is once our contract is up for renewal, we print once every other week. The issue would come out twice a month. That would save about $12,500 in printing costs. So we would only need to be allocated $47,740. Excuse me. The other option is we don't print at all, and then we would only need to be allocated about $36,000. The issue here that we need to keep in mind is if we do not print, not only is there a lack of presence on campus of the newspaper, but then web service costs would have to go up as well, considering that we'll lose our print ad revenue and the functionality would increase in complexity for the students. So we ask you to make printing a priority in terms of having a presence on campus and continuing the tradition of the paper, but we need your serious consideration. We firmly believe that support equals quality. We are currently operating as a bare bones model, and we rely heavily on the advertisement revenue that comes in. However, like I said before, this has significantly decreased since the pandemic and is never a guarantee. Therefore, we rely heavily on you so that we can survive. Your support allows us to not only exist, but to excel. We have been an award-winning newspaper, and we have a really substantial presence at the national conferences. And not only this, we can also then better provide accurate information to the student body. These are just a few awards that the Observer has won over the last few years, including 3rd Best in Show at the National Conference, the Fall National Conference in New Orleans back in October. I want to point out that Observer doesn't only impact media and journalism majors, but we reach a variety of students. We've had communication majors, but also art and film and English and several others that have taken the course. They take that theoretical discipline that they have been studying and are able to apply it to a profession. And therefore, we create more experienced and better resumed students that can then deliver a tangible product to the student body. Next, I would like to talk about Pulse and their budget. So the budget breakdown is very similar to that of Observer. You'd have your advertising revenue and the requested allocation, and then the expenses would be pretty much the same. You'll notice that Pulse is smaller. It only covers 4 paid positions, and we'd also cover off-campus printing. However, Pulse only prints once a quarter as opposed to Observer, who prints every week. And also cover the necessary subscriptions, the online presence, and memberships and award entries. This is kind of a breakdown of the budget per year. We would ask $28,412 to be allocated. That is hoping that we have an average revenue of about $2,000 per year. So quite a significant difference than Observer. We are much smaller in Pulse. This is kind of a breakdown of how that money would be spent over the course of a year. And again, that 28,412 is what we are requesting for Pulse. And in the same vein as Observer, Pulse has its awards in its own right, including 4th place at the Fall Conference in New Orleans back in October. And much like Observer, Pulse reaches a variety of students, not just the programs within the Department of Communication, but outside as well. We have art, film, and English, and 17 others. I will mention that this is 59 unique students who took Pulse the course over the course of the academic year of 2023 to 2024. And that is not an isolated phenomenon. This happens over the course of many years, many different majors taking the course, and students impacting the university much in the same way as Observer. Sorry if I'm out of breath. We understand that money is tight, and we are doing everything in our power to use the money that we are allocated smartly. We have begun to collect data from our distribution, our deliverables. We're seeing how much is left over, and if our printing is really contributing in an efficient way to delivering the product, or if it's time to look elsewhere in this modern age. We are encouraging our students to operate within their course credit hours, because they do take the class, but the effort that goes into making such outstanding publications takes a lot more work than those course credit hours allot for. We also want to send our students to conference, but we are looking at sending the minimum number of students and being very discerning on who gets to go. And we also are looking into print alternatives again. There are risks to not being properly funded. A lack of presence means a lack of information. We, as publications, inform the student body on campus news, local news, and regional activities. We give students a voice to express their concerns, a voice to express their joys and events going on campus. That all goes away if we are not funded. And the students will lose that platform if we are not prioritized. That is why CW needs student media. Colleges all across the country support their student media, the newspaper, the magazine. We are for the students, by the students. We lift you up. An Observer and Pulse investigate news on campus the way no one else will, and they hold those in power accountable for their actions. And we are always nationally recognized. I shouldn't say always. We are often nationally recognized when we go to conference. And we take those benefits, the students learn from professionals and their peers, and bring those practices back to campus to better inform those outside of the class. The point I want to drive home is that without you, there is no us. Should you not prioritize us, we will cease to be. And it's as simple as that. So I ask you to seriously consider those allocations. Thank you.
Thank you for your presentation. Oh my gosh, so powerful. Thank you. I can really tell how much care and effort you put into this, and it's really showing. And appreciate that. We'll be moving forward into a 10-minute questioning period, or is it 5 minutes? 10 minutes. Okay. I'll open the floor up to any questions.
I had a question. So when you were talking about like trips that would be taken, how do you decide who gets to go on those?
Jen can elaborate on this further.
Sure. We try to prioritize students, number one, in leadership positions. So top editors, top designers, top photographers. We look at what's on offer at the conference and how that is appropriate for the students we send. And then we also try to be sure that we're sending kind of up and coming leadership students. So, you know, if let's say my entire leadership's graduating in spring, it's more important to me to maybe send one person that's graduating to kind of accompany everybody, but then send the kind of incoming leadership staff for the next year. And the students get so much, I mean, Brandon can talk about, he was in New Orleans this fall, but the students get so much out of concentrated period of training there and meet student journalists from across the nation, get to talk about what's working for them, what's not working. They saw Woodward and Bernstein at a conference a couple of years ago. I mean, they get to talk with journalists from all over the country as well. So it's really an invaluable experience. It's just very expensive.
Are there any other questions?
I have a quick question. On the observer slide where you were talking about kind of the 3 funding options for if it's printed once a week, every other week. Yes, does that 36,246, does that already include the increase in the web services cost, or would it actually be more than that?
It would actually be more than that. It's just that I didn't get a chance to research exactly how much more it would be.
Okay, thank you.
Can you explain how ad revenue works in the Observer and Pulse magazine?
Sure. So vendors will often approach me for ad space. We have a rate card that lists our prices per print. Digital ad space is an option, and those prices are fixed, priced per month. But we don't have as consistent of ads as we used to. A lot of departments on campus used to advertise us a lot more often. And now, since departments are also facing funding crises, they tend to go for the orientation issue, which is the summer issue. We do have a couple of people who are more consistent advertisers. The Army takes out ads at least once a year. And we also have a third party that contacts us with campaigns called Flight Desk, which you might have seen the Planned Parenthood ads in last quarter. They approached us with a campaign, and that's why it was in the paper so frequently. They unfortunately have withdrawn that campaign, and we don't have that ad revenue anymore.
And how will you start collecting data on campus engagement? Sure.
We've had a meeting where we've talked about literally counting how many papers we put down in the location. And then when we pick up the last week's issue, counting how many issues are left. And essentially we'll keep a record of that data. Pulse might be a little harder to figure that out just because it prints once a quarter as opposed to once a week, but I don't know.
Yeah, and Pulse sits on shelves for longer. So we put those out, you know, at the end of the quarter when they come out. We almost never have extra copies of Pulse. Like we have to make sure we save a few, so that we don't, you know, so that we have an archive of at least one issue or a few issues of each copy. But because they sit for so long and they're also, you know, what we call evergreen, where you can pick up a Pulse from whenever and it still has articles that are of interest to you, whereas Observer is, you know, timely news coverage. So it's within a lot of the stories are out of date.
So that's what you guys are doing currently, right?
We are just starting that. We don't have any data right now.
First of all, is there any other questions? Yes.
Has there been any other like reductions in the request other than the 18,000 you mentioned on, I think it was the last slide?
Let me go to it. In Pulse, you mean, or Observer?
Pulse. Or just whatever was on the last slide is what I was referring to, but if there's more and I missed it then.
That is my last slide.
Oh,
Sorry, could you repeat it?
Sorry.
well, I'm thinking maybe it wasn't the last slide then. There's just a slide that I saw. It was 18,000. It was like the CNW. Yeah, there it is. The asterisk there.
Oh, I see.
Yeah.
So that's in reference to when we have come to you with supplemental fund requests over the last 2 years. CNW stands for Central News Watch, and for the last couple of years, the class has not been offered. Therefore, those funds were not utilized. CNW still exists within the branch of student media. That's why we came to ask for those funds, but CNW is not putting in a request for this quadrennial, this up and coming quadrennial. So that's just saying that we won't approach for that money anymore.
Okay. Are there any other reductions you've been seeking beyond that, or?
No, that was, I mean, of course, we'd still love to come to you for supplemental funds when we need it. But there is no foreseeable reductions like that.
Gotcha, thank you.
The request is quite a huge reduction from years ago.
Yeah.
Observer used to be budgeted at, I wasn't advising, but it used to be budgeted at, I think, 90 to 100,000 for S&A.
And we understand that, you know, budgets have been cut significantly. And I understand that the budgets are gonna be cut at 20%. For those of you paying very close attention, probably recognize that we are asking for the same amount of money we received this year. We can't afford to cut anymore, and still keep up with quality paper. We are printing the lowest page and quantity of papers that we can with Wenatchee World currently. We want to pay our students a fair wage, considering how much time they dedicate to it. If they had to go seek other jobs, they wouldn't have the time to dedicate to the paper. And plus, students should be paid, in my opinion. But you know, we're operating the best we can, and we just don't have enough. Yes, sir.
Are these student employees, are they, is it a requirement for their class that they be involved in the, observer or? how does that be-
Not as a paid position. So the Observer and Pulse are both courses that anyone can take at CWU. There are no course fees attached. And then leadership is often on payroll just because they put more hours in. However, those hours are in addition to the credit hours they spend outside of class. So they're not paid for the credit hours that they take. They're paid simply for the extra work on top of that.
But it's a required class, observer and pulse are required classes for media and journalism majors, and they're electives for all the other people that join us, like professional and creative writing, art, film.
How many copies of the newspaper do you typically print per week?
700. Like I said, that's the lowest one that you will print for us.
I had a question about your, I guess this is the observer budget. In 2023, single goods was at 19,000, but then in 2024, it was 28,000. Can you explain why there's such a big jump? 3 to 24. Yeah, no worries. Right, does it actually have a budget?
Oh, no, that's okay. It just needs to refresh my memory. 2024, I know that Wenatchee increased its pricing to about $50 to $75 more each time we print. So if you think about that, $75 every week for a month, and then we print about 8 months out of the year. So I think that that's part of that. There's no other increases in goods that comes immediately to mind, but that would explain a significant portion of that jump, I think.
Which adds to your budget person and add to that, that last year there was, the peak budget, top of the Central News Watch allocation that went into those, so they had an increase in revenue to offset some of the increase in costs. And so those were related to that at a second.
Just an additional question on that. Do you foresee in the next 4 years within the by an increase in printing cost?
I would like to think not, but of course, Wenatchee is a private company and I have no idea what their plans for the future are. Their prices have held steady with this new year. So I'm hopeful that they won't change their prices again for at least a couple of years. However, I will point out minimum wage goes up every year, so.
Do you have any plans to increase ad revenue in both Pulse and Observer to kind of help with any other costs that?
We currently try. I will say, and Jen has told me this, that before I took over the position, there was a full-time advertising person. Back when the fruit was fruitful and everything was green. As far as I understand it, ads is actually technically not in my contract. I do it because it helps the paper. And it's the way that we can hopefully break even. The students, though, have taken it upon themselves to go out into the community and give our rate cards to potential vendors. Like, we're really making an effort.
Is there any other questions? Okay, seeing that there is none, I'd like to take. Next, we'll be moving forward with presentation 3 from Theater Arts. You have the floor.
Good afternoon. Can everybody hear me?
Yeah.
Hi, Tina.
Hello. Hello. Thank you for the opportunity to present to you, and thank you for the opportunity to present via Zoom. I very, very much appreciate that. I'm guessing that the PowerPoint is in progress. I could share my, oh, there we go. Okay. Thank you. All right. Good afternoon, everyone. I'm here to present the request of the Department of Theater and Film to for a student employment budget as part of our quadrennial request. This is a request that Theater Arts has made in the past, and it is to fund the student employees in the department. Next slide, please. Fantastic. We're asking for an annual allocation of about $64,000, and this is 10,000 more than what we were allocated for the past quadrennial, because we are absorbing and accounting for job positions or student employees in the equipment checkout center that came to our department with the addition of the film program in fall 2023. Yeah, so it is an increase to what we would have asked for if we were only a theater arts program. So that is, and you may have noticed that. And this is to fund a packet of about 26 jobs and to account for the Washington State minimum wage, which we just talked about a little bit, but it's risen about 18% over the last quadrennial, from about $13 $13.50 to $16.66 right now. Next slide. So what we're talking about is an employment program that offers the ability of students to work in professionally modeled shops and to practice building skills in an environment that is not a classroom environment. It's a co-curricular program where people can apply and develop what they have been learning in class a little bit further, and often discover skills and applications of things that are simply unattainable anywhere else or in any other format that is not in school. And these activities are a complement to their studies and often lead to greater confidence and greater success when seeking jobs beyond graduation. Next slide, please. It's important to note that our fabrication and installation shops and the equipment checkout center that we talk about with film are the only employment opportunities like them from about, for fabrication shops, about 35 miles around Ellensburg, or if we're talking about equipment checkout shops, you have to go all the way to Seattle for the closest one. So these sorts of opportunities aren't available in our surrounding community or anywhere else, but can take our students to larger population centers and allow them to participate in the creative economy of Washington State, which just fun factoid, about 9.5% of Washington's economy is creative sector activity and employment. It's about $70 million a year. Next slide, please. So the 26 jobs we propose, this is a summary slide, are four for a scenic shop, the fabrication installation shops, 4 scenic shop, 4 costume shop, 4 lighting shop, 4 audio shop. The ECC, we're looking to fund 2 to 3 positions there, and then to create a pool of live event staffing for the McConnell events, about 8 to 10 stagehands. And that, and then an office assistant for the front office. The following slides summarize these various areas in a little bit greater detail. So I'd like to transition to the next slide. When we're talking about fabrication and installation shops, what we're talking about is a hands-on experiential learning opportunity for students to use the skills that they've got to create specific handmade and custom items, whether they're scenic items, clothing items. They are all very specific to a particular show and a particular storytelling need. When we're talking about lighting shop and audio shop, we're asking students to install complex systems that in uh, are actually ad hoc computer networks, but also electricity networks, and use them, troubleshoot them, make sure they work, and use them in order to create a creative and artistic output. These activities do end up supporting other populations of students. They support the theater majors. They support students in apparel, textiles, and merchandising program, fashion for the fashion show and dance program. We constantly field requests from music to help support the vocal performance and opera activities of that department. So there is demand and growth potential here for the work that these student positions would do. Next slide, please. Thank you. So when we're talking about film inventory management in the Equipment Checkout Center, or ECC, we're talking about asking students to manage something in the vicinity of 3,000, I think that's a conservative guess, but 3,000 different pieces of equipment to make sure that they are accounted for, that they are tracked as they are borrowed and used, and make sure that they are in good condition, or condition that's good enough to allow them to be lent out again for each and every one of those items. These student employees support the creation of film majors projects, or people who are enrolled in the film classes. And that's generally between 10 and 32 different projects each quarter. All projects big and small. They support the exploration of equipment and those students' experiential learning. The employees gain important experience with a wide variety of equipment, and allow them to develop and deepen their understanding of those pieces of equipment, but also how they could be worked or fixed or maintained. So they have kind of an inside track on equipment management or equipment for their next step up beyond graduation. Next slide, please. The live event staffing is the third piece. We think of this as McConnell events. So any event in McConnell Auditorium generally comes with a staff of student workers who manage the house, who run the consoles, who help any incoming group to use the facilities for their best presentation. And this group of people generally have been supporting an average of 3 to 6 different events each year. During our COVID year, there was nothing because nobody was meeting in large groups. But since then, we have seen an increase in interest in using McConnell Auditorium for celebrations, for awards, for presentations. And that has included community collaborations like the Nutcracker this last winter. Some of our campus collaborators are the athletic awards. The Wellies were in our auditorium last spring, and they will be again this spring. Wildcat Welcome has used this auditorium, and these student employees, Rocky Horror's use of the auditorium as well. And also visiting groups, so groups from outside of campus and sometimes outside of Ellensburg. And those have included the Evergreen Celtic Christmas, the District 8 congressional debates, and things like the Washington State Thespian Festival. So there's a lot of variety. Next slide, please. This is the breakout of the student employees by year, by class. Further demographics on employees are relatively difficult to glean because, you know, any like gender identity or any other group information is difficult to glean. But I can pull the years that folks are pretty easily. This shows that we employ at all levels. First years are the least or the smallest group, but also if you look at AY or academic year 22, so that's fall 21 through spring 22. If you you can kind of see the first years as a small band moved up to academic year 23 as a sophomores as a small band. And then we pick up a lot of juniors in academic year 24. That's an explosion of skill acquisition and also reflective of transfers. So some students have the opportunity to participate in this employment project from their very first year. Some folks come in strong as second or third years. But we all have that cream section is our fourth year or senior folks who are ready to graduate. Yeah. Next slide, please. If we're going to talk about the amount of students directly affected by this labor and the result of the labor, there are approximately 36 students employed in this program this academic year. And outside of them, 208 individual students are supported and affected by their labor last year, and that almost doubled from 116 individual students, and that is the addition of the film program to the department, so we doubled in size. And those numbers don't actually include the ATM students, the opera students, the chamber orchestra students, and in any of our kind of campus groups to come and use the space, like the folks involved in Rocky Horror or whichever else. So we could add up all of those people too. We'd probably get another 100 or so folks. Fun fact, I looked it up, 208 is like 3% of the Ellensburg student population, enrolled population. But all of this activity, all of this labor, both in the fabrication installation shops and in the equipment checkout center, and in McConnell events, all directly go to things that the public, both the campus public and also the community of Ellensburg, interact with and can participate in. Next slide, please. This is a graph of student patronage of events, again by academic year. I included this year, and it's small because we've only had a third of it so far. This information was taken from ticket sale data for events in McConnell Auditorium and in the Tower Theater. And what I was delighted to find was that the student tickets, so the student patronage, is between a third and a half of all patrons in our in these events. So and at the height, let's see, there's about 800 students in academic year 23. Let's see, there's about 600 students who were patrons last year, and then this year we're at 200, but like I said, we've only had about a third of the opportunities, so I expect that will increase. So we do have a visibility and impact. The results of this labor has visibility and impacts in the campus. Next slide, please.
Just a heads up, 2-minute warning.
Thank you, 2-minute warning, and this is a thank you slide. Woo! A couple of things to think about. Some of the things that was very difficult to include in my slides is one is the students who participate in this program. Also, oops, Zoom thinks I'm thumbs upping. Also end up becoming peer mentors for other students who are working on projects alongside them. They end up sharing their knowledge and developing and deepening their knowledge in those roles and in those relationships. They end up being mentored through unique unique problem-solving positions by faculty in a fairly like one-on-one kind of place. So there's a really great opportunity there. This is, as the academics would say, a high-impact practice. This is where the rubber hits the road for the stuff that they're learning and they're making and they're developing. And also, this employment program is entirely funded by allocation from S&A. Without the allocation, there would be no student employees. And yeah, last quadrennial, the request was reduced to only the student employment budget. And we were grateful to preserve that because it is a valuable opportunity for all students. Thank you for your consideration of this proposal.
Thank you for your presentation. It's extremely insightful into the theater department. We'll now open the floor up to a 10-minute question period. Is there any questions?
I have one. So you said that you're requesting 2 to 3 more student employees for the position of the EEC or ECC.
Correct.
You said you acquired that 2 years ago in 2023.
Yeah, fall.
Why has it taken so long to get those new student employees?
That's a great question. So last year, okay, I should like rewind. So with the quadrennial allocation that we were given in essentially like the very beginning of COVID times, and then we saw during that first COVID year, that first year of the allocation, a very sharp drop in our ability to work in space with each other and make actual things and then have that labor being necessary associated with events. And so we needed to take some time to ramp back up to the employment level that the initial allocation was offered. We are there now. Actually, we're a little bit beyond it, but we're there now. And so last year, because based on the previous year, we planned that we could probably fold 1 or 2 employees into that allocation and kind of take it on because it looked like that was the size and shape. That year was incredibly instructive. And we learned that, no, actually, we can't. So we needed to acknowledge those additional job positions, that additional labor need with an additional request. This year, we offered a supplemental request for those to cover those jobs, and we were allocated some money. Thank you very much. That's incredibly helpful. And we are now folding it into our quadrennial request.
I also have another question.
Yep.
Going over last year's amount spent, huge deficit. I saw the explanation in your report about going over in student hours and not having the correct person in the position to do that. How do you plan to prevent that from happening this quadrennial?
Neither one of the people who were responsible for the supervisorial oversights are either with the department any longer or in charge of supervising the hours of student employees. So we started there. We have been very, very regimented in our approach of scheduling hours, and it's honestly resulted in a very that austerity is causing a pinch, an acting we call pinch and ouch, and this pinch is, well, it's deserved because we did not do well last year, but the ouch is resulting in some greater conscientiousness in scheduling people and supervising hours. So nutshell, we've taken a much more transparent approach to the student employment budget, and we have removed supervisors and replaced them
Thank you.
Quick question, can you explain how the film area was funded before it came over to you and whether or not that funding came with it?
I sort of. It's an uncomfortable mystery. The year before, so the year before film became a part of the theater arts department, it was a part of the art and design department. And that year, I honestly do not know where funding for those positions came from. The year before that, the film program was housed under the College of Arts and Humanities dean. So like directly under there, no department, just a program in the dean's office. And at that time, the dean's office was funding those positions. I do not know what the conversation between the dean's office and the Department of Art and Design was during the transition. And it's very, very difficult because the dean who was the person who was dean during that year and the administrative assistant during that year, both of them have left the university. So their knowledge and insight of that history is lost. And no, no funding came with these positions.
Other questions?
With the events that are performed, like the community groups that come and perform, is there a charge to those groups to include the students who are staffing the facility? And does any revenue come back to the S&A budget to cover those expenses?
We do make a charge to the community members and to some of our campus partners. And we're because of the turnover in our technical director position, who was the supervisor for the McConnell events folks, we are examining our charges. And as far as funds coming back to the S&A budget to cover those, some of them do. I think we've been undercharging, to be honest with you, which is a difficult thing because because minimum wage and market value for the kind of labor associated with these events is probably a bit higher than Ellensburg is, I don't know, ready to hear. So yes, we do make charges. No, they do not totally cover it. And sometimes the charges are not possible to make.
This is just something I just want to make sure. Any of these student employees, specifically the live event that the theater department will host, do students get academic credit or are they just paid for their time?
No, the employees are paid for their time.
Is there any other questions? Alrighty, thank you so much.
Thank you, everyone, for your time. I appreciate it.
Thank you for that presentation. We'll be moving forward with the Veterans Center. You have.
Oh, as a heads up, I got abstained from this one.
Good afternoon, committee members. My name is Edwin Torres. I'm the outreach coordinator for the Veterans Center. I'm joined here by Ruben Cardenas. He's the director for the Veterans Center. And we're excited to present to you today for our base funding request. I do want to take some time to define some terms that we'll be using throughout the presentation as far as our student population. So when we refer to veterans, that is referring to students who are no longer serving in any capacity with the military. When we say service members, that means anybody that's currently active duty or in the reserves or National Guard, and family members is often referring to spouses or children.
Right, like Edwin said, my name is Ruben Cardenas. I'm the director of the Veteran Center. Just want to start off with what staffing we have within our department. So there's 3 professional staff members, including myself. We have 4 to 5 VA work study students in any given quarter. Since we're talking about the base funding request, it's important to note that our student employees are funded through the VA, through a VA work study program, so there's no central budgets that are paying for those positions. We feel compelled to share our mission to start off with this presentation. So I'll just read it aloud for the presentation's sake. The Veteran Center is dedicated to supporting student veterans, service members, and their families through their educational journey at CWU. We provide outreach to prospective students, assistance in navigating funding options, and programming that builds support and awareness for our community. So the things that we'll talk about today is how we work with our students, how we assist them with navigating their funding options, primarily how they access their VA funding and what we do to assist them in that process. And then also some of the programming that we're doing either ourselves or how we're partnering with our campus stakeholders to either provide veteran awareness or to build community with our students. So this is a snapshot of our students for winter quarter. As you can see, the majority of our population is located here in Ellensburg. It's 399, and then second highest population is online. One thing to note, in the fall quarter, there is no, at least I couldn't find any winter updated information. So I'm referencing fall for the makeup of the overall student population. We're at 6.42% overall of the student population of our students. And this, like Edwin said, this can be a veteran, service member, or a family member. So the foundational work of our office is processing those VA benefits for our students. It has to be our bread and butter, in my opinion. We have to process those benefits in a timely manner so our students can receive the funding that they deserve from the VA and so that they continue to attend and focus on their educational journey. So the VA recommends 1 school certifying official, 1 SEO per 125 students. As you noticed, we're at 549 for winter quarter. So myself and Edwin are current SEOs. We're at 125% over that workload, according to the VA. So we're running extremely lean, just like any other department. And it's paramount that we maintain an outreach coordinator position and an SEO so that we can complete that work for our students. So we're processing in any given quarter 500 to 550 enrollment certifications on behalf of our students. On an annual basis, we're probably receiving $2.4 million on behalf of our students of individual payments. And that's just one chapter of benefits, specifically Chapter 33 post 9/11 students. So that money is coming directly to the institution on behalf of our students. We're reviewing it and getting it posted to our student accounts so that they can get their aid or essentially receive their funding. That's how that process works.
So I do want to talk a little bit about what this funding goes to. Right here, this is kind of our annual lineup of programming. So main events are going to be our student welcome in the fall, followed by our Veterans Week of programming, and we host an annual book club. Memorial Day programming is something that's a little bit new. I'll talk about here in a second. And then we also host a graduation dinner for our graduating students. So here's just a little bit more information on those individual events. The student welcome is really important for our students, mainly because we have transitioning service members. So they are coming from the military into the school setting, and this is the first opportunity for them to start building a community outside of the military and building their post-military identity. Followed by Veterans Week. It's our most robust week of programming. It's a lot of moving parts and a lot of partners, luckily. So this past Veterans Week, we actually took a different approach where in the past we had mainly been hosting these events ourselves. This year we asked our campus partners to host an event themselves or collaborate with us to host an event. And a lot of them set us up on the offer, so 7 partners here in 2024. Followed by the book club, we usually have about 20 to 30 participants. This allows us to connect with that online population that was shown in the previous slide. All participants get a book from our department. We meet twice. And then the ultimate goal is to bring that author to campus if that's possible. Like I mentioned, Memorial Day programming is a little bit newer. We tried it this year. We saw around 20 to 30 participants when we were tabling in the CERC, kind of just spreading the information about the significance of Memorial Day and just trying to spread that awareness. We had a Wildcat display, and this is definitely something that we hope to expand this coming year. And then lastly, our graduation dinner, we have around 20 to 30 graduates. And then we also participate in a salute, which is an honor society for veterans. Around 5 students get inducted at this ceremony. And then a big portion of it for a lot of military members is us giving them their challenge coins. So challenge coins have a big significance in military culture. And so we're really happy when we're able to continue that here when they make this great accomplishment. I did want to take a moment to highlight one of our events from this previous year. As I mentioned, our book club was able, our book club that we host annually, we were able to bring the author to campus. This is Maximilian Uriarte. He is a Marine veteran and the author of the graphic novel Battleborn. So he was able to come. We had about 70 people attend. This included community members and students. He did a book signing and a Q&A, and the book signing, all the books actually sold out, so that was a great success for us. And then before he actually took the stage, he did an art demonstration with College of Arts and Humanities students, where he kind of just went through a sketch through, which was really cool to see. And then this is just kind of a bunch of the collaborations that we've had this past couple of years. So we've partnered with the Rec Center, we've partnered with Slice to host like a late night leadership. We're actually able to bring the director of Washington Department of Veteran Affairs to campus to do an interview with Charlita. So, but we're really excited to partner with anybody on campus. So we want to continue doing that as we move forward. Like I mentioned, we are hoping to encourage our students to build a post-military identity, and this is our strategy to do that, exposing them to other partners on campus. So
part of our base funding request is to fund partially our outreach coordinator. At the moment, we're at an 80-20 split between our 149 state funded funding budget and then also S&A. So it's just a small portion for that specific position, but it is a critical position. It is a primary staff member who works with our prospective students and new students. Also helps coordinate all of those events and programs that Edwin just went over. And they will partner with admissions at all orientation or recruitment events that are relevant to us. And then going back to that VA funding slide that I talked about earlier, they are the second school certifying official on campus. So we really need them to help assist with processing those benefits. So that's the amount right there that we're requesting for that position for the quadrennial cycle. And then the rest of our request is on the goods and services line. Essentially, that's going to fund all of the programming that we're trying to do on campus, whether it's for the events that we're spearheading or the events that we're partnering with other campus stakeholders with. The one thing that I really want to emphasize is this is a 20% reduction from our previous quadrennial budget request. Our division, I think, was very proactive. We met before we even submitted the request to talk about how we were going to move forward in the next 4 years, given the circumstances with our enrollment. So we know that the enrollment has a direct impact on S&A funding. We want to be team players in that process. So that's why we're taking the 20% reduction. We don't really have wiggle room in the position specifically. So that's why we're doing the reduction in the goods and services line so that we can contribute and be good stewards in that effort. So that concludes our presentation today. I want to thank you all for listening to us. Hopefully it was not boring, and it's open to questions now.
Is there any questions?
Yeah, so reading through what you submitted to us. You talked about getting a donation button set up on your website. Have you looked into how much that might cost to set up or how to do that?
There is no cost, from what I'm aware of. We are not able to get a consistent answer or a solid time frame from the foundation's office. So that's something that we're gonna continue to explore as much as we can. We know that some departments do have that specific button on their website, except, right, they have one. And other departments across campus do. So I know that they're working on it, but we haven't been able to make any progress in that specific, I guess, mission.
And then I had one more. You also talked about relocating on campus somewhere a bit more open where you can be seen more. Do you have any place in mind that you wanted to do that?
It depends on where other departments may move. I guess to be diplomatic, I'm not going to name any specific locations. But an ideal location would be a location with windows. We are a forward-facing department that has a student lounge for our students. And right now we're in an internal office space. If you want to come check us out, we have a thriving plant environment, thanks to Edwin. But our plants would do that much better in a place with windows, and also our students, I think, would come, I guess, talk to us or take advantage of the space more. We also are a partner with a Wildcat Pantry. So we have more students outside of our direct student population that are coming into our space. So a more accessible, maybe easier to find location would be better for us. Thank you.
Is there any other questions? I have a question. So in your budget from your spending, you mentioned that none of your current base funding allotment is used for student wages and things like that. But in 2024, there's a 200, well, there's like numbers here that indicate that if some of those fundings went towards CWU students, so.
We did participate in the Vet Corps Navigator program through the Washington Department of Veterans Affairs. There was a one-time site fee. It was $3,000. That program doesn't, well, they minimized the program, so we weren't able to be an approved site location. But I'm not sure what is it 250?
Yeah, 260, 270.
Is it in salary and?
CWU student temporary overtime. I'm gonna guess.
Hold something up. Do you have a tent, any tent? Was it overtime?
It's over probably for Edwin, yeah.
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 It's kind of all lumped into one, student, temporary, and overtime, so it's probably just a bit of overtime.
Could you explain more on, so in 2023, your CWU goods was $750, but then in 2024, it jumped to $2,300. Can you explain what exactly is on that category, or is it just programming?
Yeah. Yeah, so whatever's going into events, whether it's food, catering, same thing. Event space, cleanup, promotion materials, those type of things. And we did participate in that Vet Corps program, so I'm not exactly sure what line item that's falling under.
Sometimes, if you were to buy food for an event, let's say, then depending on which account code that they code it to, it can go into, like that would probably be a program expense. And if you bought, like, let's say buttons for a program, whoever's kind of doing choosing the account may put office supplies, and then it would go into your goods. So I can pull up some information and get that to you guys.
Yeah, last year we last year. We had to go through Ellensburg Pasta Company for our grad dinner because catering was not able to support it. So maybe there's a discrepancy there on where it's populating.
And I'm sorry, I'm just like really curious about this budget.
Yeah.
So can you explain what repairs or Veteran Center uses? It has a 500 from 2023.
I know, one of those is the lighting up the Wildcat, out.
Yes, for Operation Green Light. Yeah. You want to talk about that?
Yeah, so Operation Green Light is a national initiative, but it's made through a county of, forgot the acronym, but pretty much like the Association for Counties. It is fundamentally shining green light on a structure, a building, to show support for veteran community. So what we do here on campus, we partner with the Barge and then the Wildcat statue, so the CERC, to light the statue green, and then also Barge Hall green, to support and participate in that effort. So that's kind of where Operation Green Light comes into play. So we did try to do with the Wildcat Farm. Unfortunately, there's some technical but it's something that we can explore in the future, hopefully.
There is some, I guess, anything that we do to our space for our student lounge, there could be facilities costs related to that. So, yeah.
Is there any other questions? Seeing that there is none, thank you so much for your presentation. Okay, thank you to the Veteran Center for that presentation. We'll be moving forward with our next presentation. Of course. I'll open the floor up to any motions to recess.
Motion to recess.
Okay, for how long? Okay, 5 minutes. Okay, the current motion on the floor is to recess for 5 minutes. Is there a second?
Second.
See that there's a second. Is there any discussion? Okay, all those in favor of a 5-minute recess, please say aye.
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 Alrighty, the ayes have it. We'll reconvene at whatever 3:08 plus 5 is.
3:13.
3:13.
No worries. Thank you too. We'll work on it.
See you later. Thank you. Thank you.
Bye, thank you then. Yeah.
When is our meeting?
Can you stay?
Yes. What's your major?
Looking at.
Okay. See, I thought it was accounting or something. That's not like.
That's not mine.
Oh, really? You're very into this. Oh my God, I keep forgetting that.
Yeah, well, I'm sitting there doing work.
I'm like, how do you find the time? Because like, I usually rent this stuff while I'm at work. I only have like a 1 to 2 hour window. Yeah. So I'm like trying to study on this, but yeah, very knowledgeable.
Foundations. And I don't remember where I read it.
I was really concerned about.
But I don't feel like I read it.
The feeder herds.
Yeah, but
Oh,
who knows, but you read about the bees, how.
They had an
Because I remember when you.
$50,000 last year, which was 1,100 hours were overspent in student hours.
Yeah.
That's why I was thinking about, like, how are you gonna?
That sounds like they're super.
And I would rather remember we're talking about.
Or supervisor.
Yes.
And then the one they hired in. Didn't know what they were. Seemed like students just kind of clocked in, clocked out whenever they hired.
Yeah, it's okay. And then I was.
Glad
thinking
that
that you- There's
she's
in town.
tightly
like,
Order. Moving forward with our agenda for today, we have one more presentation from the community garden at the Wildcat Neighborhood Farm. You have the floor.
Good afternoon. My name is Caitlin Flesher. I am the manager for Wildcat Farm here on campus, but I also oversee our garden, which shares space with the Wildcat Farm. Our mission at the farm or at the community garden is really threefold. The first being to support community health and well-being, but this is not just personal health, this is also social health and environmental health. We strive to provide opportunities for CWU students, staff, faculty, and members of the broader Ellensburg community with opportunities to learn about, grow and enjoy fresh whole foods. And we exist to develop space, methods, and shared knowledge that help foster resilience and cooperation within our community. And this is not just the campus community, but the Ellensburg community as well. A little bit about our space. We have 70 plots available. These range from in-ground plots to raised beds. And recently we are adding on to our friendly access area, which are wheelchair accessible beds for people with mobility limitations. We have communal growing spaces, which are tended to by the collective in the community garden, but are available for anyone to harvest from, regardless of whether or not they are a member in the garden. We have gathering spaces, which is what this lovely shelter is. This is where we host events that are focused on building community, but it's also just a great spot for students who need to get outside and get some fresh air to cozy up and study for a little while. And we have pollinator gardens and perennial food crops that surround the community garden. These encourage pollinators, increase yields for our gardeners, so they have even more food to bring home, and support native wildlife and provide even more food for our community. Our main goal at the community garden is really to help break down barriers that prevent the equitable access to fresh, organic, and local food. We do this a number of ways. The first is by providing everything folks need to be successful. So this is not just access to the land, water, which is how a traditional community garden works, but this is also the seeds and starts that folks need, the tools and equipment they need to be successful. And the most critical aspect of this is the guidance that they can receive from Wildcat Farm staff. This is really helpful for brand new gardeners who maybe don't know where to start, but it's also really beneficial for more seasoned gardeners who maybe run into an issue and just need someone to troubleshoot with. A few years ago, we started to notice a pretty big increase in vegetables going missing from our gardeners' plots overnight. Understandably, our gardeners were pretty upset. There were calls to put up cameras, install fences, but our student garden coordinator at the time recognized that this is a reflection of a need in our community. Rather than increase the barriers, we decided to meet this issue compassionately, and that is how our community box was born. So what our community box is, it is this yellow box that is full of veggies up top that members of our community garden, as well as Wildcat Farm, add extra produce to for anyone to take for free. This is also how our communal growing spaces came into existence, by recognizing this need that folks need access to fresh local produce. Again, these are tended to by the collective in the garden on a volunteer basis and are available for anyone. Traditionally, gardening has been an activity that is pretty inaccessible to folks with mobility limitations. We recently added our friendly access area, which are these raised garden beds that these two volunteers are building up here. These are meant to be worked on in a seated position. So if folks aren't able to do the work bending over, they prefer to do the work seated. This is a way to make this activity accessible to them and increase access to that fresh and local food. Because we want to promote equitable access to fresh organic foods, we do not ask for any monetary fees, regardless of whether or not someone is a student or a community member. Instead, we ask for 6 hours of volunteer service that can be completed throughout the growing season in the volunteers' own time. We are solely funded by S&A fees, and we are requesting $9,800 to continue this work. This is factoring into the 20% reduction that is coming to S&A fees. The bulk of our funding is allocated towards paying the wage of our student garden coordinator. This is a student-held position and is really critical in providing the support that our students need to be successful. This person also serves as a liaison between the farm and garden. So while we share space and similar missions, we are separate entities and we need that person to kind of help bridge the gap there. This person also coordinates orientation and events, as well as helps recruit new gardeners specifically on campus. While we're open to everyone, students are our priority, and we really make an effort to make sure that they know that this is a resource available to them. Funding is also used to help purchase tools and equipment, those seeds that students need to be accessible without having to pay that really steep upfront cost that sometimes comes with gardening. These funds are also used to help maintain the garden and improve infrastructure, especially as it comes to accessibility in the garden. This is a quick breakdown of who uses our space. We've got about 35% is gardener, or sorry, everyone's a gardener. 35% is students, 13% student organizations, 10% staff and faculty members, 41% community members and alumni, and 2% community organizations. To break that down just a little bit further, overall, we have 31 gardeners tending plots in the garden. But when we include participation from student organizations, that adds an additional 40 students. So really, it's closer to 70 gardeners total that are using the space. This second number here is the one that's really important to us, though. Overall, in 2024, we've had over 112 people. This is a self-reported number. When folks sign up for the garden, we ask them about how many people they think their plot will be feeding. But this number does not include information from our community organization, which is Apoyo. They are able to feed more than 100 people out of their plot. So really, this number is closer to 212. But it's also important to note that this does not include usage of the community box or communal growing spaces. So in reality, this number is quite a bit higher. In 2024, we had 5 student organizations that participated in the garden. We added 3 new groups in the past year, including the Office of International Studies and Programs, which is growing culturally relevant foods that they are providing for their students. Some of our longstanding members are the Residence Hall Association, as well as the Environmental Club, which uses their plot to explore new and sustainable ways to produce food organically. In the past, we've had participation from groups like the Sustainable Living Learning Community. They use their food to, they use their plots to grow food for their farm to table dinners, which they held monthly in conjunction with their meetings. This is some programming and initiatives ongoing. We are always working to increase accessibility in the garden and adding on to that friendly access area. In 2024, we introduced community dinners. These are volunteering events where we work together in our communal growing spaces, followed by a potluck dinner. We recognize the importance that food can play in bringing people together and building community. So this is a way for us to start collaborating and building that shared knowledge base that's based in personal experience, and for our students to see our community members face to face. We introduced the Adopt a Plot program. In the past, students that are not in Ellensburg for the summer typically could not participate. We decided that that's increasing barriers. So this past year, we paired up those students that wanted to participate with students or community members that are still in town for the summer, so that those students are allowed to participate from April through June, and then pick up right where they left off in September when they come back. And again, have access to that fresh, local, organic produce free of charge. In 2025, we're hoping to introduce a Music in the Garden series. This is already in the works. We recognize, again, the importance that music can play in building community. It doesn't always have to be about gardening. It can be just about bringing people together. So details are in the works, and this is something we're hoping to introduce here soon. I am going to turn it over really quickly to one of our student gardeners, Mackenzie, who's just going to share a little bit about her experience.
Everybody, my name is Mackenzie Guzman, and I'm a recent graduate in farm employee. I am personally very grateful for the community garden. While I know its primary purpose is to grow food, it has also become a peaceful place on campus where I can exist freely. I consider it my favorite third space that Ellensburg has to offer. I enjoy walking among the sunflowers, talking with the bumblebees, and watching the sunset's colors wash over the hills. Spending time in the garden allows me to nurture my connection with the earth, which in turn nurtures my mental and physical well-being. I've been involved with the community garden for, did I already say that? 3 years, and I can attest that it only becomes more beautiful thanks to the care that dedicated gardeners bring to the space. I've witnessed folks of all ages, cultures, and abilities coming together to tend to the garden's communal areas, which benefit members of our community whose faces we may never see. The true impact of our efforts to feed those in need is immeasurable, and please let us continue this mission to root for one another and grow together at the Wildcat Farm Community Garden. And I hope to see you all there soon. Thank you.
I'd also like to point out, because Mackenzie is an incredibly talented and incredibly humble artist, that this is some of her ceramic work that she has created, inspired by her time spent in the garden. That is all I have today. What questions can I answer?
Thank you so much for your super insightful presentation. I don't know, just it's giving like, sorry. It's giving very like Minecraft vibes, like very peaceful, very,
That's what we strive for.
so I appreciate that. Are there any questions for?
I have one. So you talked about public music in the garden. Are you planning on charging for that, or is it just community-based volunteer?
That's something that we're still working out. We're thinking of doing it volunteer-based. So similar to our community dinners, where we start out with a volunteer project, followed by a potluck and possibly adding in that music piece. So kind of combining all of it together.
And then to follow up on that, do you plan on doing any like fundraising events or anything like that? Or?
That's something we're definitely considering. We've started hosting a lot more events that are just farm-based, trying to bring in some revenue. And we're exploring ideas for how we can do that with the garden too. It's a little more challenging because the plots are like the food is always going to those families, and that's where we want it to be going. So it's a little harder to turn revenue there, but we're exploring ideas.
Any other questions?
I have a question. I feel like I remember when the garden first started, then there was a charge. But I might be wrong. Do you know if there's ever been a charge?
My knowledge, I'm not sure. Joseph, are you aware?
Yeah, Dr. Rebecca Pearson, years ago, started this project, and it used to be located where the track field is, over by Wall Apartments. And then it was moved, when Doug Moore, project and all that, or anyway. I don't believe that there was a charge. I think the whole idea of the community garden was to have free access to growing, particularly those people who may not have the resources available to. I mean, there's enough barriers to start a new farm, like Caitlin had mentioned. So I don't believe that I could be wrong, but I don't believe that there was ever a charge for plots for the garden. Not since it's been part of the farm, there has not been.
I do have a question. Can you explain or elaborate on how the farm creates creates a relationship with the Ellisburg community and how they both impact each other?
Yeah, I mean, the farm and garden, like I mentioned, really have similar missions. We're all about breaking down barriers that create inequitable access to food. So we're starting to bring a lot more attention to the farm. A lot of people, the number one question I still get is, well, we have a farm on campus. So trying to draw attention to the farm in turn draws attention to the garden. Anytime we have a group that's visiting the farm, we also tour the garden and make sure people are aware that that's a resource that's available to everyone.
Is there any other?
Do you fill all of the available plots every year, or do you find that you have room to add more gardeners?
We always have room to add more. We do give students priority all the time. So if a student applies and if we ever were to run out, we'd have a wait list that would be prioritized for students, but we've never hit that limit. Instead, what we do is a lot of folks ask for additional plots. So after a certain period, it's typically May 1st, we open it up for additional plot reservations so that people have even more access.
Are there any other questions?
How much participation have you seen from the local community with the adopted garden over the summer? Is it enough to cover the student plots that are there?
Yeah, because this last year was a pilot program, and it was really just getting started. It wasn't really advertised in the spring because it was something that came into our minds like right as students were leaving. So we did have really good participation, both from students and from community members that took over those plots for our students. And those students came right back in. And we're really excited to, again, meet up with those community members that they were partnered with, which was really cool to see. And excited to see what was growing in their plot when they hadn't seen it for a good 3 months.
Gotcha, thank you.
Any other questions? Okay, seeing that there is none, I'd like to thank you again for your presentation. Next, we'll be moving forward with supplemental funding request, deliberating and voting on Pulse Magazine student conference travel. If it's possible. Oh, I guess. Actually, no, it's okay. I was wondering if you can have their presentation.
If I can find it?
Yeah.
Yep. Oh, we can, give me just a minute. Yeah, may I have permission to open your teams? Yeah. I know, it's always a double-edged sword. Hi.
Supplemental funding requests are not in this binder, right?
That's right.
Oh, and that was fun. Last week. Here we go. What are you looking for, Eli? Anything in particular?
I think it's just their hypotheticals. I think it's slide 7.
Their breakdown.
Yes. Okay, we'll now begin deliberating and voting. I don't think there's any, yeah. Okay, go. Just kidding. So I'll just start off, I think, oh, this is actually the wrong slide. Sorry, it's the one with like, you know which one I'm talking about, right? Oh, it's like at least 6 students.
Yeah, that's it.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Oh, sorry, that's different.
Yeah, when they're talking about.
Sorry, yeah, personally, I don't vote, but I think it would be generally, I think this is a good opportunity for students, and I think it's a good opportunity. Any conference is a fantastic way to learn about the specific environment and the culture of, for example, journalism. And it's a good way for students to network. Yeah, that's just my.
I agree with that, and the only thing that I'm thinking about is maybe the diminishing returns for sending 6 students compared to like 4. And that's so I'm personally kind of leaning more towards funding for 4 students. That's something that I definitely would agree with.
I would agree with that as well. I was leaning towards 4 mostly because they have a lot of seniority going, who have already been to other conferences. I think it'd be a good opportunity to send some of the others who haven't had as much opportunity. But limited to.
Ian, do you have any insights?
I agree kind of with the 4 thing, because you're seeing approximately what it costs about 1,000 per student for the trip, according to this table they have here. And yeah, 2 students, it would be, I guess, a little bit less cost efficient according to that. But yeah, I can also hear about 75% what y'all are saying when during this discussion too, just a heads up. It's a little quiet for me.
Oh,
Use your projection.
Yeah, I was saying sound off, yeah.
alrighty. It looks like, is there any other discussion? Okay. Feel free, the floor is open to any motions.
Motion to partially fund. In CP conference. Said partially fund, do you know by how much? For 4,404 dollars, which is for 4 students.
Okay, the current motion on the floor is a motion to partially fund the 4,404 total for 4 students to attend the conference. Is there a second?
I'll second that.
Okay, is there any discussion? Seeing that there is no discussion. All those in favor of partially approving, say aye.
Aye.
Okay, the ayes have it. The funding, supplemental funding request is partially approved for 4 students. I'm sorry, your headaches, like, probably my fault. Okay, I'm now looking for a motion. Sorry, no, I don't have.
Get pulled up for you.
Oh, no, I have it now. Thank you. Okay, seeing that that is now done, we'll move forward with public comment. Is there any public comment? Okay, seeing that there's no public comment, I'm looking for a motion to adjourn today.
Motion to adjourn.
Is there a second?
Second.
Any discussion? Okay, all those in favor of adjourning today at 3:37 PM, please say aye.
Aye.
All right, the ayes have it. We're adjourned at 3:37. Nice meeting.
Yeah.
See y'all later.